When I really sort of started to delve into it, even before I had quit school, I'd gotten pretty, it was obviously I was pretty serious about it. And I remember my mom had, and again, Nashville being the town that it was, you know, my mom had grown up best friends with Chet Atkins' daughter. And they lived down the street from one another. And, you know, one day when I was trying to learn, I mean, so imagine Chet Atkins, one of, let's say at the time, 10 greatest guitar players on the planet, maybe, arguably. And he gets a call from my mom to see if Chet Atkins will give this teenage boy who knows about 3.5 chords slide guitar lessons. And, you know, it's just, I remember even at the time, like, I cannot believe, and not in a good way, but like, Mom, you're calling Chet Atkins to ask him if he'll give me guitar lessons. And as you'll see when I play later, he never did.
Oh, I need another planet, 'cause I can't make it through. I tried to stick the landing, but it broke me right in two. How lonely would the oceans be in a world without a moon? I wouldn't want to live in a world without you.
I was going to say thanks for coming over the river, but now that I know it was just down the boulevard.
Yeah,
but
just
thanks for
straight
saying.
down the street.
I've been looking forward to this conversation, and also it's been a joy to just sort of revisit your catalog for the last couple of weeks and get back into it. And you're fucking great, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need me to tell you. You have.
It's nice though. Continue. It's great.
Totally.
Yeah, no, take
There'll
your
be 20
time.
more,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure. I'm looking forward to exploring kind of your past, present, and maybe future, and perhaps that could be through the lens of what I understand a little bit from the outside looking in of your career. Is there's kind of been a dual approach, or maybe some parallel universes, namely like writing songs for yourself and being an artist with your name on the marquee and traveling around and playing the shows, and then also actually having a considerable success writing songs for other people. And I think that the thing that has always been most interesting to me in having the kind of art that I'm interested in is people that really write from their own perspective and like want to be an artist, whatever that kind of means. So my opening question to you, sir, is, was that kind of the vision when you set out? You know, were you like, did you have a moment, a galvanizing moment, say, where you saw somebody on stage and were like, I want to be that guy? Or did you sort of accidentally fall into this and thus begins the conversation?
Well, a little of both. I mean, I'm fascinated by people that, I'm fascinated by it, and also don't know that I believe it when people are like, I've just known since I was 12, you know, and I set out on this path. I mean, I always loved rock and roll. I grew up in a kind of musical family. My uncle and my dad had all been in bands in and around Nashville. You know, saw the Beatles on TV and got instruments and started playing in bands, and had real, you know, regional success and made 45s and toured the college circuits and did all
here
that.
in Middle Tennessee.
Yeah,
but like not in country.
Not
like
in country.
Interested in being,
not in country, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
And so music was always, and then growing up in Nashville, you know, in the early mid 80s, I mean, it was a really small town still in a lot of ways. And so music was always around. Music was really accessible. Music felt like a thing that you could do to make a living, the same way I think that probably people whose parents maybe were an auto mechanic or a lawyer, you were just kind of always around that. And it was like, well, you can just do this. Mm-hmm. I always loved it, kind of thought it was a thing that was interesting. And then my old man and my uncle snuck me into a bar to see Bo Diddley play when I was 13 or 14, probably.
What bar?
It's a place out on Highway 70 that's not there anymore. I don't even remember the name of it.
Yeah.
Was really sketchy, I think, and probably a really piss poor parenting maneuver to take your teenage child to this bar.
Gray area.
Definitely gray, deep dark gray. But that was kind of life changing for me. Like I just remember it felt. I was intrigued by the sort of dangerous. Kind of felt like a bunch of pirates hanging around. You know, these musicians that were on stage, and there was a swagger and a cool to it. And I don't even know if it was good. I just know that at the time there was a part of me, I think, that was just like, that is something I don't want to lose sight of. And then I got a guitar shortly thereafter and started playing. And then pretty naturally just sort of fell into it. I mean, I went away to school for a couple of years, but I really just joined a band and just didn't go to class.
Yeah.
And then came back here and started doing this kind of in earnest. And I always thought I'd be an artist, songwriter. The idea, the people that come here and go, I want to write country songs. I have a ton of respect for. I just don't I don't understand it in a lot of ways. It's like, what is that?
It looks like a job.
It is a job, I think. And that's kind of what I didn't want either. You know, like I don't want a job. If I want to do that, I'll just go work at Kroger, or Kroger's as they call it where I'm from. So yeah, it just sort of happened.
Well, so it doesn't sound like it was an act of rebellion in a way, right? I mean, your parents weren't just like, Will, whatever you do.
Yeah, I think they loved the idea. My mom still has a note. I wrote my parents a note when I quit school to do this, because I think that, and I can say this now, I mean, you're a parent, I'm a parent. My parents were incredibly supportive when it was a cute hobby that I was doing. But then I think that there was a bit of worry that came when it was like, okay, none of those things that you're supposed to do. My family's they're not big risk takers. They're all for a dream and all that, but it's a pretty safe little crew that kind of stays in their bubble and stays in their lane.
Like when your dad was out when he was a young man, playing Beatles and Beatles-esque songs, it was probably like a Weekend Warrior, some local gigs. There was never like I'm thinking about this back, like when your dad was young, that's like when Memphis was happening, and like the proximity is so close, you know, and the accessibility of those early days at Sun, and you could walk in, you know, to the radio station with a 45 and like be like, check out my song.
Right.
That I feel like would have set somebody like you or me on fire, like the accessibility of that.
Right.
Like such was, I'll speak for myself, like I was, you know, my personal ambition as an idiot teenager was such that I would just kind of do, all I wanted to do was be part of it.
Sure.
And like I'll do anything. It sounds like you have a little of that.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, you know, when I really sort of started to delve into it, even before I had quit school, I'd gotten it was obvious that I was pretty serious about it. And I remember my mom and again, Nashville being the town that it was, you know, my mom had grown up best friends with Chet Atkins' daughter, and they lived down the street from one another. And, you know, one day when I was trying to learn, I mean, so imagine Chet Atkins, one of, let's say at the time, 10 greatest guitar players on the planet, maybe, arguably. And he gets a call from my mom to see if Chet Atkins will give this teenage boy who knows about 3.5 chords, slide guitar lessons. And, you know, it's just, I remember even at the time, like, I cannot believe, and not in a good way, but like, Mom, you're calling Chet Atkins to ask him if he'll give me guitar lessons. And as you'll see when I play later, he never did. Understandably so. But it was those sort of dumb things. Like, I guess there's a part of you. And then I remember going into there was a studio in downtown Franklin that had, you know, real artists came in and made great records there. And I just went in one day with like a demo, and like I was like, I'll do anything. I'll sweep floors. I just want to be a part of it. And they never called back. But yeah, you would just sort of do, like, I don't know. It was a crazy belief that you could do this. And I don't know. I mean, it's still, there's a beautiful naivete to it that, you kind of hope you never lose in some ways.
Dude, to wit, there's a venue here on Gallatin in East Nash called the East Room, and that it often has kind of young acts and closer to like indie rock and punk and just like not country and not like I'm trying to be a rock star, but not trying to be a country star. I'm not trying to, get on TV is not the game. And I go to those shows pretty regularly just to be around that energy that I recognize, from my own immortal youth. Yeah. When you couldn't tell me nothing. And I just I don't know how it's going to all work out, but it's just going to. There's no substitute for it.
No, and it's great. My oldest is 18 and getting ready to graduate high school and is in bands now. And so getting to watch it through that lens again, and so many things. Their childhood experience is incredibly different, and they deal with so many more things than I ever had to deal with. And so many things are different, but then there's so many of these little things. I mean, one, they all, their oldies are Pearl Jam and Green Day and all these things that, I was growing up, damn near peers making records at the same time. And, they dress like the 90s. Like it is like going back to high school when I dropped my kids off, but they're playing in bands and going to those shows, or punk rock shows at these little indie clubs and,
that's the part that hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed at all in all of the right ways. Everything's too loud. The PA shit, the drums suck. And it's just watching those kids, like it really does. It is fuel for my soul of still wanting to do this. 'Cause there is a part where you've done this for long enough and the magic is gone a little bit. It has to be. Not gone, but it just doesn't shine as brightly.
Familiar,
as it did.
maybe.
Yeah, it is. Look, I've made 17 studio records or whatever at this point, and I love it every time, and I feel good about the process, and I love to release records. I love to tour, but there has to be, after that frequency, some semblance of wash, rinse, repeat, and it's easy to forget that if you had asked, and I don't, in the conversations that you and I have had, I feel like you're in the same place, where if you had told 15-year-old me that this was what I would have at 53, like I'd have probably cut a leg off right then to be like, yes, give me that. And, but then when you do that every day, you sort of forget the magic of it. And then to go and watch through a parental lens and see these kids that are just out there with the same stupid beliefs. And I say that as a huge compliment, like just that this still matters and you can change the world or just meet a girl or hang with your friends. And it's like all these things that's just infinite possibilities. And I leave replenished every time.
Absolutely. And it makes me feel too that there's a kind of a common or something that comes up all the time with musicians or musician adjacent folks that I'll talk to is, the changing landscape of the music business, and it's all the clubs are closing, and it's a bit doomy. And I understand that it is a bit doomy in its way, and yet I know from just firsthand experience and just revisiting that in all of its particulars that there is always going to be the weird kid who wants to play guitar and his other friends that he talks into playing drums and bass respectively. Or, that is to say that just like there's always going to be kids that just have to be artists, and they're going to find a way. It's not going to be the same
cockroaches.
way. Like exactly.
We're cockroaches, little rock and roll cockroaches. Like, and then that, again, I don't mean that in a bad way.
No.
It is like there are, and I hate to be that way. The same you're saying, like the music business, it's incredibly hard, right? It's probably in some ways harder than it's ever been, and then in some ways easier. That you can get 2 audience members easier than you ever could before. but it's also harder to find them. And then, like you said, the clubs are closing. How do you deal with that? I don't have the answers to any of it.
Yeah.
But I know these little cockroaches are going to fucking figure it out.
Yeah, I bring it as a message of hope. Because it's like, it's not for us in some ways to figure out, you know what I mean? Like the kids, whoever has to do it will. And there'll be a lot of suffering in the meantime, but that's always been the case. I had plenty of my share of it, you know, as I was figuring out how to do it.
Totally.
And that's part of the formation process. You know what I mean? If it were easy, if there was like a straightforward way to realize your dreams in a musical vocation, so many more people would do it, and it would all be so much more mediocre. And like I have always embraced the crucible. Yeah. You know, not like yee-haw, yay, I'm sleeping in my car.
Right.
But there's something a little bit, partly romantic about it in a way. There's partly like a dues paying element to it. I remember like when I moved here, I went to college in Seattle area, and I had a bluegrass band that was like made it so that was my day job right out of college. And it was sort of lucky. We'd played our like first gig. I did not know bluegrass very well, but I could kind of pick, and it was like that kind of beautiful ignorance. I was like, I didn't fucking care. I wanted to sing the songs. I love Doc Watson. I got a right to love him just as much as you.
That's right.
And but the Oh Brother soundtrack hit right at that time, and so all of a sudden everybody wanted to hear bluegrass music. We were the only young kids doing it. It was sort of my launch platform. But I made a couple records up there, and I got to tour Europe, and I had started to have like a career. And so I wasn't until I was 29, I think, I moved here, and promptly everything just fell apart. I moved 2,000 miles away from my fan base. And it was so stupid. It didn't even occur to me like what I would do when I got to town. You know, I was just like, I'm fucking great. Whatever. It's worked out so far. Yeah. And I cut to like 6 months later, and I had just like exhausted all of any goodwill on the part of my family to keep me afloat. And so I was like, had to get a job parking cars at the hotel. And in my mind, in like my 20s, I was like, well, I'll just do this. And then, when it just stops working, I'll just go back to school. I always liked school, and it's kind of fun to me to like just disappear into a hallway and read a book for a long time. And then when I finally kind of hit that part of my life where it was like, it was not glamorous, I was just like I was counting my dollar bills every night and putting them in a shoebox and like to pay rent. Sure. And I was like, well, I guess this is that moment I was thinking might come where I just sort of like quietly back out of the game and say thank you. And I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. Like this is fucking great. I have like a job. I don't have to worry about making my art pay my rent. All of a sudden it was just like, oh, having a straight job is kind of great in a way, because I just show up, punch the clock, do the thing, make enough money to do it, and I had all this free time to figure out what the next deal was. Anyway, I was just all saying like, oh yeah, the hardship is what like made me get interested in like writing short stories and learning how to do film and kind of just endlessly pivoting. Whereas if it had just been like I got a piece of paper that said I could do this job and then somebody hired me, that's not the game, Yeah,
and I love the way that I think the business is changing over the last 10 years or so. I've become good friends with, and it was just through parenting, guys and girls that are artists, and not just music artists, but authors and painters and visual artists. And I think growing up as sort of thinking I was just in this, I'm in a dumb rock and roll band, and this stuff is real art, and these things don't mix, and realizing through the process that it's all the same thing, And we've talked a lot since COVID, with a couple of these artist friends, that trying to rekindle what feels like when I read about like London in the 60s, and you would hear about, bands were going to see art films and going to see art shows, and artists were coming to see rock bands play. And it was just sort of this amalgam of everybody just doing art. And I love that idea, because I feel like now more than ever, as the business gets harder, we are kind of having to learn to do other things. And I think it can make the art better. I mean, as like you're saying, as you're learning to you love to read and write. And so you're writing a book or painting a picture, or you're doing a podcast and learning to do film. I welcome that, I've built a studio and am producing records. That's not something I ever really wanted to do, but it is something that I realize that I've gotten good at over the years. And so now not only am I artist, and then all of a sudden somewhere you become a songwriter, and then somewhere you become a producer and all of that. I love the learning of that. And I hope that that's something that continues. Mm-hmm. And I think these younger kids are kind of figuring that out. Whereas, maybe folks my age, our age-ish, the kids have grown up with this. They're not afraid of the technology. They'll grab, I didn't grow up with a phone, with a camera, with a recording device that way.
Yeah.
And I love the sort of brave aspect of these kids. There's no fear with the younger. When I watch my kids start to deal with studio, they'll come into the studio and they're not afraid. Where there's a part of me that's still afraid I'm going to mess something up gear wise. They're not worried about it at all. They'll push buttons and, just come up with something that's cool. And I try to take that forward into the way that I work and think about art and think about songwriting and all those things too.
Let me ask you this. This is something I think about as a question for a fellow Gen Xer. In light of what you just talked about, like the technological savvy that's sort of required by any entrepreneurial minded person in the arts. From our perspective, I share the same thing. I'm just like, I'm slow at everything. It's infuriating to my wife. And yet I still do a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because kind of I have to. But that's to say that like other people are faster than me, AKA younger kids who grew up with fucking phones. Okay, it's not my fault. But what it has made me reflect on in the last probably 5 years is I've sort of evaluated my skill set, which is not negligible, but not competitive with a 25-year-old kid. It's like, okay, well, what do I have to offer before somebody elects to send me off to the glue factory? And for me, it's been like, well, growing up without a phone and being sort of a reflective minded kid, and then now being the grown version of that kid, perhaps there is this is maybe a bit hasty, but a little bit of a wisdom component to what I offer. And if I can sort of frame that, or make it accessible, that's something that maybe isn't out there everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's been my kind of take on that. And I wonder if you have like evaluated your skill set or whatever as a Gen Xer or incorporated that.
I think about the same way. I was telling a friend the other day, relating that to the studio world of what I do for, what we do for making records. I am not interested in the science of rock and roll or the studio. I am very interested and skilled in the alchemy of the studio or rock and roll. Like, I don't want to know the polarity pattern of this microphone. Doesn't matter to me, but I do want to know if I stick this microphone into the speaker cabinet and turn it up real loud and it sounds cool, like that I'm good at. And I think that one of the things that a lot of the younger kids, like you say, that I go to work sometimes and you watch these kids just bam, bam, bam. They can crank out a demo and everything sounds really cool, but most of them have never put a rock and roll band in a room together and played. And like, because it isn't just about where the mics go. It's like, how does the bass player interact with the drummer, and not just in the room, like, creating a vibe on a session and making sure that everybody, because at the end of the day, this shit is fucking fun. Like, and if you're not, I've been on sessions where people are stressed out and those things, and I won't do that anymore. It's such a gift to get to do this for a living. And like, we're in Nashville. We're in we can literally walk out of where we are right now, and within a block and a half, be around the greatest musicians, the greatest studios, and you know, it's all accessible, but you have to still know how do you direct those people and all of those things. And so I have discovered that ability, and that is a thing that it's a skill that I think I am always the first one to sort of downplay things or try to make what I have done or do not a big deal, sort of self-deprecating. And I'm trying to be a little better about just like, oh wait, this is something I'm good at. I should embrace. I don't have to be an egomaniac about it, but it is something I'm good at, and I can offer that, and it's been something that's been really beneficial. So I enjoy that part of the process.
Yeah, that self-deprecating card is really charming when employed to great effect, which you do. And I understand as somebody who attempts to play that same card,
sure,
that it's difficult to know when you're overplaying it sometimes. Like, just to your point, just like when somebody says, hey man, that sounds awesome, you don't have to say like, or
I know, or just
say thanks.
And I'm so bad at it, you know, and I mean, I've had to do a lot of therapy to get to the point where I figured that out. But like, yeah, just like take the compliment and just say thank you. Like, you don't have to know what else to say. You're like, oh, thank you. That's actually pretty fucking sincere. Thank you.
I'm curious about, is there, okay, we don't also have to talk about this. It's a long time ago now, but it is part of, you know, your journey. But you were involved in a pretty horrific moped accident, moped encounter with a van. Mm-hmm. And like from the outside, I read that story and I'm like, that man's life was changed forever. But I wonder what it was like from your perspective then, and then, you know, has that perspective changed with almost 20 years of reflection, or do you see it differently?
Well, you know, it was a weird time, like that period of my life, now with enough sort of distance to it. I mean, it was a wild time. You know, I met my wife. She's my girlfriend at the time. Fell in love hard and quickly. Got pregnant. Had a baby, weren't married, got married. I mean, all of that was within about a 18-month period. And then when our kid he was born in April, June, July, August was the accident. You know, so that pulls all the chips off the table for a year, you know, learning to walk again and doing all the things. Maybe
you can recount briefly, so for people unfamiliar, like what happened and how serious it was.
Yeah, I was making a record over on the other side of town. My wife and I were living over here with a newborn, and was driving back home and on a little scooter and a 15-passenger van right on Gallatin Road and 7th, just turned in full speed, hit me head on, went through his passenger window. He never saw me until I was basically in his passenger seat. Got to Vanderbilt and they were able to, you know, I had to put me in a coma for a few days to try, and I'd lost so much blood. I mean, if I had been any other town that didn't have a level 4 trauma unit, I would have not made it, which is scary and weird. But yeah, spent months in the ICU and in rehab there at Vanderbilt, and rebuilt pretty much the whole right side of my body. I mean, hundreds of stitches in my face, lost teeth, tore eyelids off, broke 5 ribs, a sternum, shoulder blades, both sides in multiple places, femur, kneecap, torn ACLs. I mean, it was a mess. It was just kind of like everything is broken. Yeah, it was like I had the combo meal. I had all of them at once. Yeah, so it was a really hard time, you know, and not knowing how to deal with any of those things. And at that point, I was a hard touring musician. There was no, like, nobody else was cutting my songs. There were, you know, it was just whatever I made going on the road 200 days a year is what we lived on. But that was, you know, that changed all of that. And really for about 2 years, you know, it was the first time in a long time where music wasn't the focus, and really wasn't even on the menu at that point. It wasn't this thing of like, oh, I can't wait to get back and play. You know, like there are times where, you know, you'd had to miss a tour or something because you were sick or something gets canceled, and you go, fuck, man, I can't wait to get back out and play again. This was not that. You know, it just really wasn't. I knew I'd do it. I hoped I'd do it again at some point, but it wasn't a thought for at least probably a year. And at that point I still couldn't tour, but I was at least able to, I could hold a guitar when I was still in a wheelchair, and I started trying to sort of write again. And it really was an interesting time because it was the first time in years where it's just all I had to focus on. And it did sort of recalibrate what I thought about when I was writing. I think because, you know, when you're doing 200 shows a year and just trying to slug out a living,
you're like slipping your co-writing in here and there.
Yeah, or you know, or you're writing a verse on the road,
yeah,
and then you forgot it by the time you get home, or what, you know, just it's just
yeah.
It's an afterthought in a lot of ways. And when I look back, it's a miracle that I was able to make records that I did, I think, living that way. And so I think that it really did sort of rekindle my love for the process of being a writer, because I was able to focus on it. And I think my songs got better because of it. Mm-hmm. And it changed the way I sang a little bit. I was intubated for weeks, and so my voice was different when I was out of the hospital and able to sing again. And again, kind of, I lost, there was sort of a big, powerful soul singing thing that I was able to do before that was nice and people reacted to it. But I think I was also able to, not to sound self-aggrandizing, but I was a good enough singer that I could sing myself out of B- songs sometimes.
Sure. No,
I mean, really,
you could sell
you know,
a B- song.
I could
yeah.
sing a B- song, and you could probably get it to an A-, yeah, and maybe an A, yeah, sometimes. And I don't say that bad. Like, that's a, you know,
it's a skill.
It's a skill.
Hey.
And I feel like I had milked that.
Yeah.
And I lost some of that. And so then, but I also then gained, like, there was a subtlety to singing that I didn't have before. And some of that comes with age as well. But I think that forcing myself to have to sort of do that, and then that made me dig a little deeper into the, you know, if I've got a B- song, rather than singing my way out of it, could I spend an extra day or a week on it? And then all of a sudden, you know, if it's an A- song and you can still sing it, then all of a sudden you're to an A+. That's a different, like, that's a bargain that I'm like, okay, that's worthwhile. And that's something I had to learn. I don't know if I'd have learned that without that process.
Forgive me for dropping a baseball analogy in here, but it's like the pitcher, you know, the powerhouse slinger who's got a 103-mile-an-hour fastball, who cut to 15 years later and there's 10 miles off that fastball, has to learn how to, like, make the sliders and curves count. It's like Kershaw, great Dodgers pitcher, Clayton Kershaw, early in his career versus late in his career.
Totally.
He just had, and there's something so, to me, as a fan of the game, particularly the pitching side of the game, such a special joy of watching an older pitcher rely on, like, having learned his body and his strengths and weaknesses, and also he just has to be smarter. Yeah. And that's what the writing analogy to me is. It's just like, you have to, like, get really in there and work it all out in advance, because you can't just, like, swagger your way through it out on stage and make it work.
And I loved it too, because it was also, then there was a realization of the ability to sing. Like, singing always came pretty easy to me, and it was something that was, people reacted to. You know, again, that's that's a good thing, not a bad thing. But the beauty of having that as sweetener on top, not a crutch to fall back on, that was a thing that was really important to learn. Because it was like, oh, okay, like you're saying, let's really focus on these songs a little bit. Can this third verse, can I tighten this up in a way where if you just read it on paper, it's great. And then if you really sing it in a way that's compelling, the greatness really compounds, and that's a fun thing to get to do. But I didn't do that great early on.
It's interesting to think about too, like from a bird's eye view of your career writ large. If you didn't have the fantastic voice, which it is, man, you're great, still a really top shelf rock singer.
Thank you.
But if you hadn't had that talent going in, it would have, those early doors might not have opened. And also the response of other people wouldn't have led you to think that, oh, this isn't completely insane. But then, so you needed that to get going in this, and get some experience and some confidence and some accolades. And only then, this is probably what, 10 plus years into your career, 10 plus years.
Yeah.
That you like some of that, you had to pivot a little bit, and then, but that pivot made you have a deeper relationship to your songwriting, and then AKA like be a better artist in that way. Because the voice is still fantastic,
thanks.
I don't care about maybe you've lost a few decibels or something, but it's just like Joni Mitchell, old is better than Joni Mitchell young in terms of her voice.
Yeah. And that's what, I loved when I first discovered like blues music growing up, and it was like, there was a time where it was like everybody was into Stevie Ray Vaughan, obviously. And I loved that, but I didn't, where everybody wanted to be a guitar player because of Stevie Ray Vaughan. Like there was something about, it was the songs and it was the presentation of the songs. I remember having this like aha moment, even as a teenager, going like, these are songs, like he could do this when he's 80. This isn't something that's like, this isn't Girls, Girls, Girls by Motley Crue.
Yeah.
Again, nothing wrong with listening to that on the radio, but there's something about an 85-year-old being on stage and singing, songs about the strippers on Sunset or whatever. It's like, I don't know how much I love that. Whereas, The Sky Is Crying, I could see this 80-year-old man still making that give you chills. And so, yeah, I kind of always wanted songs that were that way, that were something that, had, that you could grow with, like a
staying power, resonance.
Yeah, like a really like nice denim jacket, that's like, oh, this thing just gets cooler as it gets a little wear and tear on it. You don't have to have all the new creases in it and everything, I guess.
Maybe that's a nice segue to see if you would be amenable to playing one live in the studio.
Sure.
And that's great news. The request the second is maybe you could care to set this up, what you're going to play.
Yeah, this is a song I have a record that came out earlier this year, and this song called Another Planet I wrote just down the street here with Mindy Smith, who we'd have been friends for years and had never worked together, and wrote this really quaint kind of beautiful folk song. And then I took it into the studio and completely bastardized it with a rock and roll band. And it was fun because I sent it to Mindy and wasn't sure what she would think, because it was a lot different than what we had birthed that day. And she loved it. And it's been one of my favorite songs to play with the band. And I'll do an acoustic version of it now.
Let's hear it.
That motel in the desert, felt your heartbeat through your chest, talked about forever, now I forgot the rest. Picking up the pieces, you were changing up the plan, orbiting around the truth, getting lost with you again. Oh, I need another plan. landing, but it broke me right in two. How lonely would the oceans be in a world without a moon? I wouldn't want to live in a world without you. Static on the TV, slow dancing with despair. You held me like a promise while I held on by a prayer. You chained the door and said you're staying, and you said you always will. That night scares me half to death when I think about it still. Oh, I need another planet, 'cause I can't make it through. I tried to stick the landing, but it broke me right in two. How lonely would the oceans be in a world without a moon? I wouldn't want to live in a world without you. If you were gone, I wouldn't last one day. No, I'd have to find some other place. 'Cause I need another planet, 'cause I can't make it through. I tried to stick the landing, but it broke me right in two. How lonely would the oceans be in a world without a moon? I wouldn't want to live. I wouldn't want to live. I wouldn't want to live in a world without you. I wouldn't want to live in a world without you.
Dude, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
For those of you at home who listen closely, you can hear my daughter chime in on the third chorus. She had a little harmony she heard.
She
and
was
couldn't
killing
say
it.
no.
Yeah, man.
That's great. I wonder how it's changed for you. Let's rephrase this. You've had what I started this conversation off with is mentioning that, like, you've had cuts from other artists, and what's not clear to me is if in those situations, are you writing, whether you have a co-writer or you're just writing a solo, writing by yourself. If you're writing for another artist, are you writing a different way? Are you writing, or is it always kind of coming out of like a personal place aimed more universal? I don't know. That's a clumsy way to set that up, but however you care to feel
I am better. I just had this conversation with a friend, a cousin of mine that's a songwriter and producer here in town in the country world, and he's incredibly successful and great at that. And I was just having this conversation, like, that isn't something I'm good at. I have never had any success trying to get together and write a song for someone else.
Yeah.
The only success I've ever had, every song I've ever had that's been cut, whether that was a hit or just a cut, it has always been something that I had written for me. Honestly, it's always been something that's been on a record of mine first. When Even If It Breaks Your Heart happened, I got signed to, then all of a sudden, then I was a songwriter. I'd been doing it for however many years, making records, and I was just always an artist. And then that happened, and all of a sudden...
Meaning you got a publishing deal?
I got a publishing deal. Yeah. Like, somebody came, and not just... I'd had a publishing deal real early on as an artist in a rock-based publishing deal, but not like a Nashville, here's your draw, you write us these songs, and we're going to pitch them and make them hits. And, at that point, it was post-accident. Even If It Breaks Your Heart had happened.
And that was a song that you wrote with Eric Paslay and was recorded by the Eli Young Band and went to #1.
It did.
Big deal. So
Yeah.
that was awesome.
And we got it was nominated for a Grammy. It was nominated for CMAs and ACM Awards. I mean, it was really one of those things that was just like we had hit the lottery and didn't expect any of it. It was all just new territory for me. And I was just hanging on for dear life. All these new things. I was like, I don't know what any of this means. You open your BMI check, though, and you're like, well, this is really great.
Totally.
And then all of a sudden, a big country publishing company comes and goes, look, we would like to offer you a real salary to write for 3 years, and we're going to make this happen. Like, we're going to make this happen for you a bunch. And, I'm sitting there still limping from an accident with a baby at home and a wife that's in grad school. And it's like, man, I don't want to say no to this opportunity. 'Cause really, like, if this happens one more time, like, this is life changing. Yeah. And so I did it for ultimately 5 years. I still did artist stuff and made records and toured, but I really wanted to try and see if that world had a spot for me, and it didn't. I did it, and I didn't want to do it half-assed. That's one thing I will toot my horn about. Like, if I'm going to do it, I'm really going to do it. I did. I showed up every day, and I went into those rooms and tried to make I wanted to make really great songs. And there were a lot of days where you're making really not great songs. And it was hard. I ended up at the end of it being about as unhappy as I've ever been in this craft. And I wondered at the time, is it something like, am I done? And I realized that I was just done. I think I just needed to, there's those moments, I feel like every half decade or so, 5 years, 8 years, you kind of get one of those moments where you're like, okay, do I just stay here? Have I hit this place? Or do I dig a little deeper? And I feel like what I had to do at that point was, I had to kill the baby, which is hard, because it's like, man, here is this really golden opportunity. I'm making more money than I've ever made. Even as an artist, because then all of a sudden we were making a record. We'd made a record that sort of played more in that lane, and we had a top 40 country hit as an artist, as an independent artist, which is crazy.
Yeah.
More people were coming to shows. We're playing, making more money than I'd ever made. And I was just miserable.
What was the downside? What was that about?
It was ultimately, it was playing for people that didn't really give a shit about the music. They were fans of the radio, and they would hear a song on the radio and come to a show, but it was the difference in playing for... I got into this because there's a connection, especially from a live show. Like, you really want it to be this almost like tent revival kind of thing. Yeah, like, there should be... The show should go... Like, a great show to me is like, it's everything. It's... There's these really quiet moments, and it should be really small and intimate. And then there should be these really massive moments where you think the roof is going to blow off the place, and sort of the roller coaster of everything in between. And what I saw in that world was just, I saw it at my own shows. I saw it at friend shows when I was out with them. And it was just, you'd go and see a show, and people come, there'd be 1,100 people at a venue, and they would just talk through the whole show until the one song came on, and they'd sing along, and then they just go right. And it was like, I don't want to be background music for this. And it just felt really bad. And so I see where artists get in a place where it's like, okay, you've built a thing, and if you want to maintain this, then you just have to do the same thing again and again and again. And eventually it probably fades a little bit anyway, but it just sounded miserable. And so that was one of those moments I was like, I'm going to take literal steps backwards and just rebuild it again. I mean, I've built it to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, managers, now ex-managers, ex-agents, I mean, all think you're a moron for it.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't know that they're wrong. I mean, it's a real shitty business decision and a really great artistic decision and soul decision. And pretty instantly was happier and writing songs and things I was proud of again. And eventually, you know, it takes years, but you just build it back and build it in a way where you've got the people that you want coming for the reasons that you want. And it feels a whole lot better in the long run.
Like, I don't know why I keep thinking about, you know, like, well, I want to describe or understand better, because I kind of have a better what was the nature of that? Why were those fans that way? And, I mean, I kind of have a hunch, but like you said, they had a relationship to the song, not the artist. And I noticed this about, it's kind of like, this is across the board too, music or acting and film stuff, or the moment things start making more money, everything around it gets a little cheaper and a little less authentic. And for all participants, audience, artist, handlers, but the money's so great that it's like, well, shit, just keep doing it, man. And I understand that, like, why that's so unsatisfying. Whereas if you're playing a show, like, I guess fewer people, this is my gut feeling, is about what happened after you sort of took a step back or took the reins back. Maybe the shows were smaller, but they were people were there for you. Yeah. And they were there because they liked that kind of music. They weren't using you to feel cool. Right. Maybe that's the thing that I'm trying to articulate a little bit, of just like noticing that, some like big artists, half the time it's like every single phone's up in the air because it's just somebody getting their souvenir that I was there.
And I'm just not, I don't want to be a product. Sure. And that's what it felt like. It just felt like, here's this thing. We want you to do this thing over and over and over and over. And yeah, I didn't really want to do that. And I had seen it a little bit, you know, when I first signed a deal, you know, I came up at a really interesting time. I mean, first record deal was in 2002, actually in 2000. And then, you know, 2002, 2003, we had made the major label debut and we're out. And, you know, you were catching the sort of tail end of that late 90s massive radio stuff. And so we'd get on these festivals. We had a single that was doing well at rock radio and especially in different little, you know, you still had market. You didn't have the big corporate conglomerate everywhere at that point. So you could have a radio hit in Charleston and Birmingham and, you know, Binghamton, New York, but you'd get on these festivals. And again, I sort of saw a preview of it then. It was thousands of people at shows. And it wasn't just for us, you know, they would come to see Fastball and they just wanted to hear the one song. And it was a little depressing even then, because you realize, like, oh, these people aren't necessarily music fans. They're radio fans. And there's a disposability, I guess, for lack of a shittier word. It just doesn't mean anything to them. It's like, that's the thing. And then tomorrow they'll find, you know, these are the folks that like, they would go see Pearl Jam, TLC, Snoop Dogg, and George Strait. And there's nothing wrong. Like, I kind of like all of those people too, but I like different things about, you know, I don't know. So there's something about that where you're just a radio fan. Like, you're just going to the arena shows. You're not really digging in to what this artist is about or saying or why they're doing this. And I'm not that kind of music fan. I don't necessarily want to play for that kind of music fan. And I thought if the second time, and when it got into the country world, I really believed if we could just give these folks something really authentic, they would understand it the way that
He would respond.
the way we understand it.
Yeah.
And what I realized is some people did, but it was such a small percentage. It's just people that don't consume and care about music the way I do. And that's not, I'm not saying I can't sit at a barbecue. I have family members that are this way. They don't, not everybody that I have to interact with has to love rock and roll the same way I do. It would probably be a much worse world if everybody loved rock and roll the way I do. I want to see lots of different people at the grocery store. I want to have picnics with different types of people. I'll sit and eat chili with damn near anybody, but I don't want to play rock and roll shows for people that don't understand what it is and why, or certainly not a whole bunch of them. It's nice to get one every now and then that all of a sudden you can see the light go off where some of them are like, oh, I've never seen this before. I want to come back and see that again. Or all of a sudden it changes their perspective on what music is or how you pay attention to it. And
I came across something like some sort of version of that realization when I was a bit younger. And when I first moved to town, I didn't know anybody, and I was like working at the hotel, and I still had a little bit of a thing,
Yeah.
And so people were taking my meetings, and I was saying yes to everything because I don't know which way forward. And so I would get into these writing sessions on the row, and just from the outset, just be like, I hate everything about this.
Yeah.
And I don't want to write a song for Kenny Chesney. I don't know what that song would be. I don't know how to do that. I don't listen to that music. So that was kind of a clue, like, maybe you're in the wrong place, son. So I didn't do that kind of thing again.
Yeah.
But I realized that what I always liked was kind of like, and I don't want to, this is the wrong word because it sounds pretentious, but there was a sophistication, maybe lyrically or musically, or there was something in it that grabbed my attention that had nothing to do with the production necessarily, or the shellac. And I just was always drawn to those artists. And when I go to those shows, I would notice they had kind of smaller audiences, right? And the ticket prices weren't terribly high.
Yep.
And I that was when I realized okay, if this is to the extent that this is the kind of music you want to make, this maybe adjust your expectations accordingly.
Yeah.
And that was a bargain I was willing to make. Because consequently, the fans that I had, I'm still not famous. My Spotify numbers are laughable, but I've had a really great career because the people that I did reach, I have a great connection to them, that has persisted. That's why we got to make this TV show. That's why people that have been interested in whatever idiot way that I have of understanding myself in the world and trying to express that, I was fortunate to make a point of contact with those small people. And that, I think to your point, it's just that has been so much more meaningful, was the word that you used.
Yeah.
As opposed to a string of number one hits. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And those houses are
I'd
much
love
bigger.
to have them.
Yeah.
I mean, I would. Don't get me wrong. I don't want if there's anybody watching or listening right now that would like some great songs for the record, I'm all for giving you some. But I just can't do that. Like you said, I would sit in these rooms sometimes and it would be comical. You would just start something. And some of the times, I did learn a lot. The great writers here in town are great. And just the way that they work. I learned a ton about just the craft, showing up, and you just, at 10 o'clock, you put pen to paper with nothing. And you come up with something. There's, I don't feel my time was wasted in that. I just feel like I was sort of working in other people's restaurants and going okay, one, your food, some of them just the food sucks. All of it. I don't want to take anything from your restaurant, just my paycheck and I'll go home. There's other ones though that you're okay, I don't really love the dish you're making, but I do like the way that you clean your pans or the way that you hold your knife. I mean, these little things. Sure. It was okay, I have taken little pieces of all of those things. I am a much better writer than I was because of that process and what you glean from different people. But
yeah, we had Barry Dean on here not too long ago, and he's to me like
Yeah.
emblematic of just like a writer's writer.
Totally.
Just a fantastic come into a room and just
Yeah.
like craft a song, and he's got a catalog to show for that. And I mean that was also like an awesome experience for me to talk with him for that day, and just to see that other side and be humbled by it in a way, and also to know that like, yeah, I'm still gonna write my ignorant Korby songs.
Yeah.
Because that's what I like to do. And
Right.
if that ends up being what happens, then it's not to say that I'm not willing to like compromise. In fact, I would say that everything I do in a way is like aimed at like, how can I justify the pursuit of this forward through time by at least having it have a chance at making money.
Yeah.
Maybe
And I mean,
it would be a big payday or a medium payday, but like that is a huge part of making a living doing this.
Totally. And I still believe that, there's a 3-minute song out there. Like our lives can be completely changed in 3 minutes. I mean, it really is. It's that simple. I've seen it done. And if I've done it once, it can happen again, so there is an excitement to show up like, man, maybe this could be a thing, but it has never happened when I've gone into a room with people and it's like you're saying, it's like, look, if Kenny Chesney calls and wants you and I to sit together and write him a song, I can do that all day long. I feel like we would write a really great Kenny Chesney song. But if Rick down the street calls you and I and says he wants to write a Kenny Chesney song, I don't even know what the fuck that means. Like, and how are we getting the, I don't know. I don't understand that process.
Yeah.
And then you'd get in there with people that would also, you just start writing a song and then somebody would go, well, this sounds, I knew I was in the wrong thing at one point when somebody said, well, this feels like an album cut and not a single. And I just thought like, I would rather work at Taco Bell than I would do this shit again ever. And, there were those rooms that I just didn't go back in. You know, and they were glad to see me go. Nobody's lost any sleep. This town's none the worse because I'm not doing those sessions anymore. It's okay.
Here's a weird question. Just curious about this. You, at this point in your life, I mean, hopefully you have some idea of what it is that you're good at. But my question is, among the things that you're not great at, is there one that kind of comes to mind that like, I'm not very good at this, but I work at it to be better because it's sort of part of my kit? I don't even know if there's an answer to that question. I just like, I think about that stuff, like what I'm bad at, but I insist on keeping to try to like get it better. Clawhammer banjo playing, for instance.
What is it?
Clawhammer banjo playing would be one for me.
Yeah, I mean, I start to see things as I'm doing more studio work and doing things where I'm playing more instruments, because I'm not a studied musician. I've never taken a guitar lesson or a piano lesson. It's just shit that I've figured out. And I'm trying to, there's an old John Lennon quote about, I'm an artist. If you give me a tuba, I'll get you something out of it. I understand that mentality. I feel like I come from that same school of thought. But I really am. I am trying to just be a little more patient. I am impatient as a creative. I would much rather go in and bang something out in an hour and have it be fresh and kind of in the moment, and then put it out there and let it do whatever it does. And I don't want to totally lose that, but I have learned if I can take a little more time with things, it can. So patience and being willing to try something. The line between good and great, if it's a little extra work to get to great, sometimes it just needs to be good and be done with it. So patience of that, if that makes any sense.
That does. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I struggle with that, wrestle with that.
I noticed one thing that I have been consciously trying to work on that's like basic to my personality. I'm very DIY, and I've like kind of learned a bunch of things along the way. I'm kind of good for a songwriter. I'm pretty good at guitar, but for a guitar player, I'm shit.
Same.
But I have always like sort of insisted on doing things my own way, and I realized that a little collaboration, like letting somebody else in, particularly like a producer, and like being a little more collaborative minded, and not so like, this is how the song goes. That's that. I wrote it like this. These are the little lick I play right here in this part. Would, I think, not even, I don't even know if it would result in better tracks or better songs, but I think it would result in a more creative experience for me, rather than just kind of having like, I did it like this, and this is how we're going to do it.
This is how it goes.
God, it's embarrassing for me to even say that out loud, because it's just like antithetical to the kind of the spirit of this self-discovery or co-discovery.
Yeah, but it's also, there's a point where I think with anybody that, from an artist's mind, and again, that's where I think we both, what led us to this table is ultimately we wanted to be artists. That's what started this path. If you start out taking every piece of advice, then you never find your own voice. You never, like, part of what you have to do is you have to be a little hard-headed.
Yep.
And fuck up. Like, because I think about times, there are times I can remember being obstinate with producers early. I mean, Ken Coomer, that lives down the street, one of my closest pals, we have made a lot of records together, and a lot of great records. He's played drums for me on things. He was a producer on some of my most successful records. And when we started, I was a fucking dickhead to Ken. I mean, he will still laugh about it. And I had to learn through that, there was some trust, and now we could do these things. But also the records were made better a little because of that. Like, I think he also respected me more. I could have handled it differently, could have talked about it in a different way. But the
bullheadedness,
the self-assuredness of it wasn't necessarily wrong. There is a thing as an artist. There's nothing worse. There are few things worse than an artist that will just come in and say, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. You're going to make pretty rubbery art at that point. It's just not going to be great. Now, again, I think there is a part when you build trust with somebody and you can go, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, but I'll try it. Mm-hmm. And then then you've got to be willing, because if you're really great, you can admit when your idea is not right, and then you can go, okay, man, you're right. That bridge that you wanted me to rewrite, it is better. We should do that. Mm-hmm. But if you get that, and you get that feeling in your stomach, where it's like, if I do this, I'm going to be embarrassed. Not because I'm afraid of it, because I think it fucking sucks. Mm-hmm. And then you've got to fight for that. You got to figure out how to stomp your foot hard enough to go like, no, this is a line I won't cross. And you can only learn that, I can say for myself, there are things that I can look back on records of my own that I've done where I was like, yeah, that was not a good decision. It wasn't my decision, and I
you signed off on it.
I did, and it was like, I'll try it.
Yeah.
And there's fortunately not tons, but there's a healthy handful over the course of records. It's like, if I had that to do over, I would have.
I love this. I've never even, I feel like, gone down this line of inquiry before, but it's such a hugely important aspect of any artist's career over time, is this crazy and impossible to negotiate tightrope between doubling down on your own intuition versus letting somebody else in. And there's not a right way. There's not a standard policy. It's on a case-by-case basis, and you make the decisions the best you can and suffer the consequences.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason why some amazing songs just kind of like don't hit, and some songs that are sort of sleepers in the studio like explode, because there's this alchemy that nobody's aware of.
Yep.
We're all kind of like chipping away at a thing, then it becomes revealed at the end. That's a really great thing to consider. And I think that maybe that's a wonderful way to end it. I feel like that means that we can do this again.
I love it.
In a year or whenever another record comes. I don't know, or just we'll figure it out.
Anytime. I'm nearby.
Dude, this has been so fun to talk to you.
Likewise.
And I have some almost unsurprised that I still am just like full of a redoubled determination to take another chance and see what can be made of my own creative work, and also expand on this creative work that we're all like doing out in the world.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for doing this too, and congrats on the success of the podcast and the movie and everything else. I'm super excited for you.
All right, let's talk soon.
Let's do it.
Peace.
The Morse Code Podcast is produced by Korby, Lenker, and Jared Hammond in East Nashville, Tennessee. Our executive producer is Randa Newman. You can find full videos for this and all previous episodes at morsecodepodcast.com.